Some places are abandoned because people simply stopped using them. Others are abandoned because history left them behind. But across South Carolina's low country, there are ruins where the past feels strangely close. Burned churches, forgotten plantations, crumbling structures hidden among trees, and stories of people who, according to local legends, never completely left. Tonight we're counting down the 10 most haunted places in Charleston and the Low Country, and we're starting with 2 places where the ruins themselves are part of the horror. Number 10. Old Sheldon Church ruins. Deep among the trees near Yemassee stand the remains of a church that has survived fire, war, and centuries of history. Old Sheldon Church was built in the 1700s. During the Revolutionary War, British forces burned the church in 1779. It was eventually rebuilt, only to be destroyed again during the Civil War. Today, all that remains are massive brick and tabby walls rising from the surrounding trees. There is no roof, no congregation, just empty arches looking toward the sky. And somewhere among those ruins is where the legend begins. Local stories tell of a woman dressed in brown who has been seen near the old graves, particularly around the burial site of a child. She doesn't appear like a traditional ghost story. There are no dramatic screams, no monster, just a figure standing where no one should be. And when people look again, she's gone. Whether the story is supernatural or simply a legend passed down through generations, the setting makes it difficult to ignore. Because standing inside those ruins, you're surrounded by a church that was destroyed twice, and the next location is even more isolated. Number 9. Brickyard Plantation. Kiln ruins hidden near Mount Pleasant are the remains of an old brick-making operation connected to the plantation era. What survives today isn't a grand mansion. It's something much stranger: old brick kilns, ruined structures, and overgrown remains slowly being reclaimed by nature. But local Charleston folklore gives this forgotten place an even darker reputation. According to stories recorded about the area, a mysterious woman has been seen around the old kiln and nearby creek. She's described as wearing ragged clothing, appearing around dusk, and then disappearing. The legend has been connected to the lives of enslaved people who once lived and worked in the area. The history itself is real. The apparition is part of local folklore, and that's what makes the ruins unsettling. There are no polished hotel rooms here, no modern walls, just crumbling brick, trees, water, and a story that refuses to disappear. But these are only the beginning, because the next location isn't simply a ruin. It's what's left of an entire plantation destroyed by fire, and according to local legend, something from its past may still remain there. The Low Country is full of places where nature has slowly taken back what people once built. But sometimes, the ruins aren't the only thing left behind. Number 8. Stony Baynard Plantation. Ruins on Hilton Head Island, surrounded by trees and marshland, stand the remains of the Stony Baynard Plantation. What was once a working plantation is now largely gone. The main house was destroyed by fire in the 19th century, leaving behind fragments of brick and tabby walls scattered across the landscape. Today, walking through the ruins feels less like visiting a building and more like discovering something that was never meant to be found. The plantation's history is tied to William Eddings Baynard, the man who owned the property during its later years. And, according to local legend, Baynard's presence may still linger around the ruins. Stories describe a mysterious figure associated with the old plantation, along with reports of a strange procession appearing around the property. There's no scientific evidence proving that a spirit remains here, but there's something unsettling about the location itself. The house is gone. The people who lived there are gone, and yet, pieces of the plantation are still standing, as if the place refuses to completely disappear. But our next location is different. Here, the walls are still standing, and they're covered with the history of people who were locked inside them. Number 7. Old City Jail. For more than a century, Charleston's Old City Jail held prisoners behind its walls. Built in 1802, the jail became notorious for its harsh conditions. People accused of crimes were confined here. Some never made it back outside. And one of the most infamous names connected to the jail is Lavinia Fisher. Her story has become part of Charleston folklore, with legends claiming she was America's first female serial killer. The historical details surrounding that claim are debated, but Fisher was genuinely imprisoned here before her execution. And that's where the jail's reputation becomes darker. The building is now abandoned from its original purpose, with rusted metal, deteriorating walls, narrow corridors, and empty cells, creating an atmosphere that looks almost frozen in time. Paranormal stories surrounding the jail include unexplained movements, voices, and sightings. But the most disturbing part isn't necessarily the ghost stories. It's knowing that these cells once held real people, some waiting for their sentence, some waiting to die, and some simply waiting for someone to decide their fate. The jail doesn't need a ghost to be frightening. Its history already is. But our next location takes us even deeper, underground, because beneath one of Charleston's most historic buildings lies a dungeon where prisoners were once held in darkness. And, some say, the past never left those walls. There are places where the darkness comes from the lack of light, and then there are places where the darkness comes from what happened there. Our next location is one of those places. Number 6. Old Exchange and Provost. Dungeon above ground, the Old Exchange looks like an elegant 18th century building, but beneath it is something much darker. The Provost Dungeon was used to hold prisoners during Charleston's colonial and Revolutionary-era history. Pirates were imprisoned here. Prisoners of war were held here. And people accused of serious crimes could disappear behind these walls. One of the most famous prisoners connected to the building was Colonel Isaac Hayne, who was executed by the British in 1781. Today, visitors can enter the underground dungeon, and this is where Charleston's ghost stories become especially unsettling. Local paranormal legends describe strange sounds and unexplained sensations coming from the underground rooms. Some stories even connect the dungeon to spirits of prisoners who supposedly never left. But imagine what it would have been like centuries ago. No electric lights, no easy escape, just stone walls, darkness, and the knowledge that you might never see the outside world again. That's what makes this place different. You don't need to imagine a haunted house. You're standing inside a real dungeon. And above that darkness, Charleston once built a theater. A place designed for laughter, music, and applause. But according to its legends, some of its performers never left the stage. Number 5. Dock Street. Theater Charleston's Dock Street Theater has a history that stretches back centuries. It has been rebuilt, renovated, and transformed over time. But the theater's most famous stories aren't about the performances that audiences came to watch. They're about the performers who may still be watching. One of the best-known legends involves Nettie Dickerson, a woman said to have died after falling from an upper floor of the building. According to the story, her spirit is sometimes seen near the theater's balcony. Another famous name connected to the theater is actor Junius Brutus Booth, father of John Wilkes Booth. The stories surrounding the theater have helped create a reputation that goes far beyond ordinary stage fright. Imagine walking through an empty theater after everyone has gone home. The seats are empty, the stage is dark, the curtains aren't moving, and yet the building still feels occupied. Maybe it's simply the atmosphere of an old theater, or maybe some performers really do refuse to take their final bow. But the next location has something even more disturbing, because there, the ghost stories don't describe just one spirit. They describe figures with very specific identities, and one of them is said to have no head at all. Number 4. 20 South Battery. From the outside, 20 South Battery looks like an elegant historic mansion overlooking Charleston Harbor. But inside, the stories are anything but elegant. The building has become famous for several reported apparitions. One of the strangest is known as the Headless Torso. According to the legend, guests have reported seeing a figure moving through the property without a visible head. Then, there's another spirit often described as a gentleman caller, a mysterious man dressed in old-fashioned clothing who reportedly appears inside the building. The stories don't end there. Different rooms have developed their own reputations, with guests over the years claiming encounters that range from unexplained movements to figures appearing and disappearing. But what makes this place especially interesting is that the stories aren't centered around one single ghost. It's almost as if the house has collected its own cast of characters over generations. And when you're inside an old Charleston mansion at night, you might start wondering which one you'll meet first. But our next location has a ghost with a name, and even a ghost dog. Number 3, Poogan's Porch. Today, Poogan's Porch is a restaurant in a beautiful historic Charleston house. But its most famous resident isn't alive anymore. Her name is Zoe Saint Amand. According to the story, Zoe was connected to the house before it became the restaurant. After her death, employees and visitors began reporting strange activity associated with the building. But there's something unusual about the legend. Zoe isn't the only spirit said to remain. The restaurant is also named after Poogan, a dog that became associated with the property. And according to local stories, both human and canine apparitions have been reported. Imagine working late inside a centuries-old Charleston house. The restaurant is empty, the tables are cleared, the lights are dim, and then you notice movement somewhere upstairs. Except, there's no one there. Stories like these have become part of the restaurant's identity, but whether they're supernatural encounters or simply legends that grew over time, one thing is certain. Poogan's Porch has one of the strangest ghost stories in Charleston, and we're not done yet. Because our final 2 locations take us away from restaurants and mansions, into places where the dead have been buried for centuries, and where an entire warship has become part of Charleston's haunted folklore. One of them will take the number 2 spot, and the final location is unlike anything else on this list. Some places are haunted by the people who once lived there. Others are surrounded by the people who never left. Number 2, St. Philip's Churchyard. Hidden in the middle of Charleston is one of the city's oldest historic burial grounds. St. Philip's Churchyard contains centuries of Charleston history beneath its weathered gravestones. Generations of residents, soldiers, politicians, and ordinary families were buried here. Many of the graves are hundreds of years old. And over time, the cemetery has become surrounded by stories of unexplained encounters. One of the most famous legends involves a mysterious woman associated with the graveyard. Local stories describe apparitions appearing among the old tombstones, sometimes disappearing before anyone can get close enough to identify them. Other stories focus on strange sensations around particular graves. But unlike a haunted hotel, there's no room to leave behind. No hallway to close, no door separating you from the cemetery. Just old stones, ancient trees, and graves that have been here longer than most of Charleston's modern streets. Perhaps that's why cemeteries feel different at night, because everything around you is silent, yet you're surrounded by thousands of stories. And if that sounds unsettling, wait until you hear about our number 1, because this time, we're leaving the ground completely. Number 1, USS Yorktown. Moored across Charleston Harbor at Patriots Point sits a massive piece of American military history. The USS Yorktown. This aircraft carrier served during World War II and later became a museum ship. From the outside, it looks enormous, but inside, it's a maze. Long corridors, small sleeping quarters, dark stairways, engine rooms, and hundreds of spaces where sailors once lived and worked. During its years of service, the ship witnessed accidents, injuries, illness, and death. And over time, stories began to circulate about unexplained activity aboard the vessel. Visitors and paranormal investigators have reported strange sounds, unexplained movements, and the feeling that someone is nearby when no one else is around. Some legends even describe apparitions appearing in areas of the ship where sailors once worked. But perhaps the most unsettling part isn't any individual ghost story. It's the ship itself. Imagine being alone inside a warship after dark, walking through a corridor that hasn't changed much in decades. Every sound echoes. Every doorway leads somewhere you can't see. And somewhere deep inside the ship, there are rooms where people once lived their final moments. Whether the USS Yorktown is truly haunted remains impossible to prove. But after everything this ship has witnessed, it's easy to understand why the stories refuse to disappear. From burned churches, to forgotten ruin, to underground prisons, to a warship filled with history. Charleston and the Low Country have no shortage of places where the past feels strangely close. And maybe that's what makes these places so frightening, because sometimes the scariest thing isn't seeing a ghost. It's knowing the history behind the place where you're standing. Charleston is a city where the past never feels completely gone. From burned ruins and forgotten prisons to old graveyards and a warship filled with decades of history. Every place has a story. But the question is, which one would you actually dare to visit after dark? If you want more places where history and the unexplained collide, subscribe to the channel. And if you enjoyed this countdown, leave a like and tell us in the comments, which haunted place should we explore next?